Okay. Welcome, everybody. Most of you I know. I'm Shannon Aronson, the team leader at Keller Williams in Summit and Short Hills. And I am so excited today. I have Nicole Gary, who is a top agent in Manhattan with Keller Williams. Thank you so much, Nicole, for joining us.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
It's my pleasure. And since I know you don't want to sing your own praises, I'd love to sing them a little bit for you. Nicole runs a top team in Manhattan. She has been a platinum producer for the last, I think, 5-6 years. She has a claim to fame of selling what I think is one of the most expensive properties, or excuse me, leasing one of the most expensive properties in Midtown at Time Warner Center for over $4,500 a square foot. It makes me want to just stand still because that sounds so expensive just to move an inch. Nicole, it was so generous of you to be willing to talk us through your listing presentation. And I'm just dying to hear what you do and learn from you. So thanks so much for your generosity.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me, and hope everyone's doing well amidst this crazy time where we're all stuck in our homes, and hope everyone's families are healthy right now. And there's no better time to catch up on our learning and sharpen all those tools in our toolboxes. So I'm here today to teach you my perfect pitch class and teach you how to get all those listing presentations. So as soon as you can go back out there and meet with your clients and get pitches, you'll win them all, and you'll have a lot of great inventory so we can sell and get through, have a great third and fourth quarter, hopefully. So I'll take questions at the end, guys. So I want to tell you just a little bit about myself. So I've been in the business about 8 years. I have a 7-person team. I've been with Keller Williams just over 8 years and started in the business. I had a background, actually. I worked for a family business. I sold custom window treatments. So I sold motorized blinds and draperies for many years. And I was always in sales. I loved sales. I loved people. And back in 2008, when the market crashed, we didn't know what was going to happen with my family business. I left and went into fashion for a quick minute. That was terrible. It was definitely not for me. So I decided, I ended up working for a hardware company. So I was selling architectural hardware, and I was walking around with a suitcase full of brass and bronze doorknobs. Each one weighed about 100 pounds, and the suitcase probably weighed God knows what. And I was calling on architects and designers and the same clientele, which was pretty much the top 1% in Manhattan. And I decided one day I wanted to do something for myself. I loved sales. I had built a ton of relationships. I networked like crazy. So I decided to get my real estate license. I learned the best buildings in Manhattan by working for my father for so many years. And I was in and out of these buildings because we would measure and we would install. And it was just the next best step. And it was the best choice that I ever made in my life. So I walked into class March 1st, actually just almost 8 years ago now, just over 8 years ago. And I had my little suitcase full of hardware. And I sat through Ignite, best class. And the first day in Ignite, they said, go through the A's in your phone and start calling and seeing if anyone has real estate to sell. So I called an ex-boyfriend at the time who was in the A's, and he said, oh, you've always been great at sales. Mind you, I hadn't talked to him in over 10 years. He goes, I'm sure you'd be great selling my investment property in Battery Park City. At the time, I had lived on the Upper East Side. It was pretty far from where I lived, and I didn't know the neighborhood well. And I said, sure, of course, I'll sell it. And by the end of the first week, I had quit my full-time job, which was pretty frightening. At the time, I had just paid off my debt. I had less than $3,000 to my name, and my rent was higher than that. And I decided there was no make it or break it. There was only make it. And I ran, and I followed the Ignite procedures, and I started getting listings, and I did a lot of rentals just to survive in the first few months. So, this business is never easy, but I absolutely love it, and I really enjoy it. And there's always been ups and downs. In the beginning, I got so busy so fast that I tried to build a team the wrong way out of desperation. And I quickly learned that I needed to take a step back and retool and read the MREA again and build a team the right way. So next thing you know, I was just reaching out to people, clients, friends of mine who actually had I had sold them window treatments back when I was like 23 years old. And I got a call one day from the husband, and he said, my wife told me to call you, but I'm not sure why, because our shades aren't broken. And he didn't know I went into real estate. Long story short, they wanted to list their apartment, and he had a broker from another firm who told him the apartment was worth about like 4.5. And I explained to him why I thought it was worth about 6.5. Next thing you know, we put it on the market 6.7 and sold it within a week for 6.5. So it just goes to show those relationships are really important, and just showing people and being in front of them and staying in front of them. I always stayed in front of the wife like once a quarter. I never tried to sell real estate, but we're in a relationship business, so it's all about keeping those relationships. The great part, the reason I chose Keller Williams actually in the beginning was because I love the agent-centric culture. I love the education, and that's why I love to give back and teach classes like this. So here I am teaching my perfect pitch to you guys. And I say, just so you have an idea of my business, I usually sell anywhere between probably like 35 or 60 a year, depending on the year. In the last couple of years, we retooled a little bit and shifted away from luxury when the market started to shift in New York about 3 years ago or so, and did a lot more transactions under $2 million. But prior to that, my average price point was around 4.5. So you have to shift with the market. There's always money to be made in every market. I always say that. You just have to shift and be in front of it and keep in front of your clients and your relationships. This last couple of weeks has been very different for all of us, especially in New York. The mayor said you cannot show real estate, specifically to real estate agents. So we've been learning how to deal with that and do more things virtually and just stay in front of our clients. So there's no better time to work on your business and just keep up with your lead gen. So kind of go through my listing presentation with you guys. Every time I go to a presentation, I bring a nice little hardbound book. And in that book, I have this presentation. I also bring a folder with comparables. I bring charts, and I have charts that say days on market. I have charts that show median price point. And I also show all the apartments that are for sale in that particular building. So there's neighborhood comparables, and there's comparables that are in that specific building. So we're a little bit different from you guys in New Jersey, that we have different floor plans. And I always say it's great to know everything that's going on in that building. So before I even go to meet with a client, I'll find out a little bit about them. I'll ask questions to understand who they are, how long have they been there, and I'll know their floor plan. I'll also call the managing agent in the building and find out if there's any policies and procedures I need to know, such as open house policies. Some of our buildings won't allow us to host open houses. Some will. Some you have to have another person with you. So I make sure that I'm armed with all of that knowledge. So if I'm up against another broker, I have all that knowledge that other broker doesn't. I'm going to end up winning that listing at the end of the day. So I'm going to start going through this with you guys. So basically, I have a introductory page here. So it's basically page just thanking them for the opportunity to list their property and whatnot. And this book I leave with them. One of the things that I do at the beginning, like the first second I walk through the door, is I really figure out where they are on the DISC personality spectrum. So if you guys have studied that, I figure out exactly who they are based on the way they greet me, if they invite me in, if they offer me a drink. Never drink alcohol with your clients until you close the deal. But I just look at the little hand movements, if they ask me to come sit down on the couch, or some people are very get to the point. Some want to give you the tour. So based on that first 15 to 30 second interaction, I can always tell where they are in the DISC personality profile. And based on that, I figure out how to tweak my presentation. So for example, if they are an S or a C, I may go through every page in this. If they're a high I or a high D, I'm going to get straight to the point. I'm going to talk about the numbers. I'm going to talk to them about how I'm going to market this, what they need to do to bring it to market, and I'm out of there. So my listing presentation could last anywhere from 15 minutes to 2 hours, depending on who the person is and how many questions they have. So, whoops. All right. So kind of get into, after that welcome letter, a little bit of my resume. So it tells a little bit about me, what I've done in the past. And I also am I ask a lot of questions actually with clients. And I find in life, no matter who it is, people like to talk about themselves. You have 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. So a lot of times the best meeting you'll have is when you let somebody talk for an hour, you ask them very basic questions and they start to open up to you. And they open up to you because they appreciate that you're asking about them and they want to talk about themselves. And the more they talk about themselves, the more comfortable they feel with you. So a lot of times it's great to actually just listen and not talk so much yourself. So again, this is just a little profile. This is basically I call it my resume. So all the properties that we're selling and renting now, things that we've sold and rented in the past. So we work all around Manhattan. We do everything from residential to commercial mixed-use buildings and development sites. So we try to get all that out there, and we let them know we work in Brooklyn as well. We're not specific to one neighborhood or one price point. We really go everywhere our clients are. So again, I look at this as our resume. One of the most important parts of going on a listing presentation and winning it is to show why you're different from every other broker and why you're going to be better and why you're going to sell that apartment or that home faster. So one of the main things I always say is if you can't afford a professional photographer, don't even list a property, because that's your resume. At the end of the day, everything is online. Everything is virtual now. Everything can be recorded. So if you're not going to show great photographs and you're not going to write a very inviting description, there's no reason for you to even go on that listing presentation, because there's a million other brokers who are going to do it way better than you. It drives me crazy when I see listings that are up and they have photos that are just so unprofessional. And that's when I look at, okay, when are they going to expire? Because I'm going to go after that listing. And unfortunately, we see it all too much, but you want to make sure that your resume is professional, and no matter where somebody Googles you, they're always going to find great information and they're going to find professional listings. Another part of this portfolio that I think is really important are the descriptions. So when I write my descriptions, I make sure they're really welcoming. So for example, if you have let's say you have a little studio apartment in Manhattan, we can make it sound really amazing, or we can make it sound really dull. So a description could say sun-filled studio apartment, or it could say walk through your sprawling or your grand entryway into your beautiful studio apartment. Feel the sun basking through the windows as you drink a cocktail when you come home from work. So there's so many words and descriptions we can use to really make it welcoming. And the more welcoming your description, the more likely somebody is to actually come and see that property. Especially now that we're in the days of virtual, you want to make sure that you make it sound like this is the most beautiful home and they want to live there and they want to enter this space. So testimonials, sorry guys, I'm trying to, okay, there we go. Testimonials I find are really important as well. So it doesn't matter if you just got into the business or you just started in real estate, you can have testimonials from a prior business. I mean, everybody came from somewhere, right? Most people in real estate did something before this, had some sort of job. You can ask for testimonials from any single person that you worked with in the past. And testimonials are really huge. I once had a client actually who was purchasing an apartment in Manhattan for his daughter who lived in Massachusetts. And he actually asked me for 12 references. He called every single reference and actually checked each one of them. And guess what? I ended up getting the business as his buyer's broker. I sold him an apartment for his daughter, and then he ended up buying himself a pied-à-terre for me and couldn't thank me enough. So references and testimonials are huge. After closing every deal, I always ask my clients for one. And that's something that when you're going on a pitch, people are going to like. So I always offer, if they'd like to speak to any of my past clients, they're more than welcome to. And I can't tell you how many times that seller has actually asked to speak to my past clients. And because of the testimonials that my clients have given, I've won that listing. So those are really important. So I kind of go into press as well. So anytime we get a listing, we want to try to get it out to as many people as possible. And we want to try to get as much press as possible. So I go through some of the past press that we've had. There's some really, oops, let's go back here. Sorry, tech issue. Okay, so a couple of articles here which were really interesting. One that was fun was this gumshoe genius. So something my father always taught me was be a really good detective, and I teach that to my team as well. So I had a client who owned 2 apartments on a floor in a building, and he wanted to combine them. There was another apartment on the floor where the gentleman had passed away several years ago. So I was trying to figure out who owned that apartment so I can get it for my clients. And it took a lot of detective work and a lot of calls and a lot of follow-up. And finally, almost a year later, I figured out who was the beneficiary and, the executor of the estate and who was going to be responsible for selling this apartment. So I finally found out who it was, and I made an offer to her, and I offered to take out all of the belongings, and my client would pay for everything to get the apartment cleaned up. She wouldn't have to do anything. Long story short, they just weren't ready emotionally. So I followed up every month, and then I found out that there was going to be an increase in the common charges, an assessment actually in the building. And the assessment was going to be like over $1,000 a month in addition to what they were paying. So after about a year of follow-up, I finally let her know about this assessment. And she said, you know what, I think your client's offer sounds really great. We got him the apartment. He's in the process of combining them all right now. And once he does, we can actually sell it as a larger apartment. So always makes sense to be a good detective and ask as many questions as you can, because you never know what you'll get from those. Just some of the other press that we've had in the past. And then I go through a marketing plan. So usually the time that we walk in for a listing presentation is the time a client is considering selling. They're trying to make a decision. They want to make sure they're priced to sell. I find out what their motivation is. So understanding what your potential seller's motivation is huge, especially in a market where you have a lot of inventory. You really want to make sure they are motivated. Are they downsizing? Are they growing their family? Are they moving to another state? How fast do they need to get this sold? So we talk a bit about that, and I understand what their motivation is, and then we'll go into the launch. So I was talking about building requirements, but any staging and preparation, marketing and positioning. I'll kind of go through this with you guys. So in the pre-launch and positioning, basically when I'm there, I'll walk through the home with them, and I'll let them know anything that needs to be done in order to get the home ready for the market, for photos and whatnot. So part of that actually is whether it's cleaning out the apartment or cleaning out their home. Maybe sometimes they need to get a storage bin. Some people don't realize how cluttered their home looks because they live there every day. But if you actually walk them through and say, you as a buyer, you want to walk in and you want to know that this is going to be your home. So I always suggest taking out personal photos, trying to take out, if there's like a ton of books that are piled up, taking those out, hiding any cords, anything you could do to really make sure that this home is going to look great. I've worked with sellers in the past, actually, I'm just going to bring up some pictures, where they actually didn't realize like what a mess their apartment was. And you always want to say it in the nicest light. You never want to say, your home looks like a complete disaster. Let's fix this. So the nice way to say it is, I think we could clean this up a little bit and organize and make it a little tidy. And I'm very hands-on with my clients, and I'll make sure to, I'll offer to even help them get this together and help them find a storage bin or help them do what they need to do to declutter. And I can't tell you how many sellers I've worked with or actually thank me after they've done that and say they wish they lived like that. It's funny how sometimes you just live in a space for a long time and you don't realize what's in there. So we hire a professional photographer once it's all ready. We get floor plans and video made. Sometimes we'll do virtual staging. So we also make sure to list kind of everywhere. So I go through this part of where's this going to be listed. So I'm part of GPS, Global Property Specialist, which I'm sure some of you at Keller are familiar with. And because of that, we actually are able to syndicate to all of these different international sites. In addition, we also have something called Proxio Pro. So Proxio Pro allows us to take all of our listings and they're transferred into 14 different languages. So people in China are seeing it in Mandarin. People in India are seeing these listings in India. So it's a really great tool. It's just another tool in your toolbox to help you win that listing, to show that you're marketing this to as many people as possible. I always talk about marketing to other brokers, which is huge. About probably 95% of our deals are co-broke. So getting this out to other brokers is important, getting this out to a database. I personally have a database of about 15,000 people. So I always talk about that when I'm on a listing presentation. I also talk a little bit about who I'm getting this in front of. So I do a newsletter every month that goes out not only to my own client database, but also to other brokers. So just so you have an idea, about 90% of my business is broker-to-broker referrals. So I get a lot of referral business from people such as yourselves and kind of through the Keller network all over the United States and all over the world, which is really great. And I've built the best relationships that way. My best friends in life I've actually met through Keller Williams Luxury. So the great thing about that is our listings also go on Keller Williams Luxury site, and they're seen by more viewers. They're also, I send it to my agents, like some of you in New Jersey, and I'll send it to agents in California, in London, in Dubai, and they're putting these properties in front of their clients as well. So we're really marketing it in every way we can. Another thing I do when I take a listing is I show all the national sites, but I go to the person above, below, the left and right, and see if they have any interest in expanding. So you never know. Sometimes the buyer is right next door. We also call through buildings. We do just listed postcards and we do just sold postcards, and we'll circle prospects around that, not only to try to find the buyers or sometimes to try to find the next seller. So these are all great things that you can use. One of the most important parts when you're listing is to price right, especially in a market where you have a lot of inventory, which we do in Manhattan right now. So the first 30 days are always the most crucial. So I always make sure to go over this page. If somebody's a high D or a high I make sure that I talk to them about pricing right. I'll go into my charts and my graphs, and what I'll do sometimes is ask them if they have a price in their mind before I give them the price that I thought it was worth. So the reason I do that is because I don't want to take overpriced listings in a market that you have a lot of inventory. It's just not worth the time. If a client wants to overprice something, I'd rather tell them, okay, you can overprice it with another broker and I'll see you in 6 months, because you're not going to sell it. I don't want to waste your time. I don't want to waste my marketing money, and I don't want to ruin the relationship with you. I'm a huge relationship person. My clients always become my friends for life. So it's really important that I keep those relationships and I keep them on track, and I only give them the facts. So there are some brokers out there who will overprice just to get a listing. And at the end of the day, what happens is the broker is not, or sorry, that your client is not happy. They don't sell the home, and you ruin your relationship. And you also may ruin it with their referral broker that actually referred that client to you. And that's the last thing I ever want to do. So I'll ask, do they have a price in mind? And they don't want to give it to me. I'll ask them, okay, we'll write it down on a little piece of paper, and then I'll tell you what I think, just to make sure we're along the same lines. If we're $2 or $3 million off, we're going to have an issue, and I'm going to talk to them about that. And I'm not going to take the listing again if they just don't want to look at my comps and they don't want to look at what's happening in the market. I'm very realistic, and I think it's important that you are realistic with your sellers so that you set their expectations and you set those expectations correctly. Because if you don't set those expectations correctly and you set them too high and you don't reach those goals, again, they're not going to be happy with you. And I think we're all in business to sell real estate, not to list real estate. So at the end of the day, we want to close our transactions. We want our clients to be happy. We want to help them get to the next place or their next investment. And we want to get our checks, and we want to move on and make sure that everyone's happy. That's the goal. So there are some pricing misconceptions I'll go over with them. Some people think that they have the most beautiful home, and because they put so much money into it that they should get that out. And that's not always the case. Unfortunately, this real estate, like any other investment, sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. Of course, you always want your clients to win, but again, you have to make sure that you work with them on any pricing misconceptions to make sure that they are realistic so you do get their home sold. Some of the other marketing we do is we do marketing flyers. So we'll do just listed, just sold. We'll also do these are just an example of a show sheet. We actually had listed a villa in Lausanne, Switzerland at some point, and we did marketing postcards, and we also did a single property website. So right now, I'm actually marketing something in Tenafly, New Jersey with another agent there, and we did a single property website for that too, with a beautiful video. And I always say it's great to invest in your properties. Not only is it going to help sell them, but again, that's part of your portfolio. So when we had this villa, we got really creative and thought, okay, how can I sell this property in Switzerland when I'd never even been there? I'd never seen it. There was a tenant in place. It was hard to even get any access. I just had some pictures. So what I did is I really got creative and started calling concierge companies around Switzerland. So companies that would get somebody a car, maybe we'll get them a bottle of Dom Perignon or anything they really needed. So those concierges actually have great relationships with high net worth individuals, and those are the people that you want to be in front of. So thinking outside of the box and getting really creative with your marketing is great. Also in Manhattan, doormen, I say, are the gatekeepers. Doormen know everyone in the building. They know who's selling. They know when they're selling. So you always want to build those relationships. There was a building I sold a lot in, and every time I went, I would get to know the doorman and ask about their families. I'd bring them coffee, and that little coffee goes such a long way. These have become some of my best friends in life, actually, and they tell me everything that's going on in those buildings. They'll even tell me when there's a potential buyer. They'll say, oh, so-and-so from 52D actually wants a bigger apartment. I think your listing would be great for them. So build those relationships and keep those relationships. Let's get, okay, so positioning, sample featured listing email. So this is something else that we do. So we send out featured listings every month in our monthly newsletters, and we also do just listed. So anytime I take a listing, I send out that listing plus our newsletter to my entire database. Again, we're about 15,000 people. So if you guys want to be on it, if you're brokers and you want to see the listings that we have, I'm more than happy to send it to you. I'll give you guys all my email at the end of this, and I'd be happy to add you to my database. So it's just so easy to get in front of so many different people. And this, again, is another great marketing tool. There's been many times where a broker friend of mine in California has said, you know what, I just saw your listing in New York. It's perfect for a client of mine who just got a job in New York. Or a friend of mine in Chicago said, oh my God, you know what, I actually have a friend moving to New York, and I think this listing would be perfect for them. So it's just huge to get this out there on to as many people as possible. Also social media. So social media has become huge in this day and age. I get all my properties out on Instagram, on Facebook, and try to get them in front of as many people as possible, again, with hashtags and whatnot. There's times where I've gotten inquiries about properties because I put them on social media. I even once had a listing where I got a phone call once from a woman who I didn't know who she was. And I said, well, how'd you get my name and phone number? And she said, oh, my son told me that you're the best real estate agent in New York. And I said, oh, that's so nice. Who's your son? So she told me, and I was like, well, that's really interesting because I have not seen him since 3rd grade. And I found it, so I said, that's so sweet. But apparently I called him to thank him, and he saw me on social media, and he saw that I was selling these properties, and he told his mother that, I was a great broker, and I ended up selling their Manhattan apartment really quickly, which was an investment property, for more money they thought they could get. So that was a win-win, and it's just, you never know how far social media can go. So it's really powerful, and I definitely, I suggest that you guys use it as much as possible. And especially when you're on your listing presentations, it's great to tell your potential sellers that you are going to have this all over social media. I see, I have a lot of friends who are in Texas, and I see all the listings they have. And, there's so much referral business to go around. And I look at everything that my fellow brokers list because people are leaving New York. Some of them are going to Florida. Some of them are going to Texas. People are always making moves. I think also when we get out of this crisis that we're in, people are going to want to make more moves. So they're going to want to either downsize. They're going to want to, maybe they realize the space they live in is too small and they want more space, or they don't use all their space, or maybe they figure, a vacation home could be really important. So I think just thinking about this and thinking about how you can refer business to other brokers and really capitalize on that is also a great thing. The other thing about that, and why the Keller Williams network is so great, is because we have referral partners everywhere. So we can, if our clients, if you are selling a home in New Jersey, or they're selling a home in New York, and they want to move to Wisconsin or Dubai or London, whatever it is, we can always introduce them to another broker there and get referral fees. My first year in the business, actually I was probably in real estate about 3 weeks. I was out to dinner at Philippe, a restaurant in Manhattan, and I was sitting next to 2 guys who we just kind of chimed in the conversation, started talking. Long story short, one of them wanted to buy a property in Miami as a pied-à-terre, a $6 million property. And so I said, oh, I know a broker, a great broker. At the time, I really didn't know a broker in Miami, but I did my own homework and my own research. And I interviewed 14 brokers before I found one that was actually, I thought knew more about their market than I did. I referred him. I got about a $40,000 referral check, which was huge my first year in real estate. And I kept that relationship with that that buyer. So last year, his daughter bought an apartment in New York, and he came to me for that apartment. So I can't stress enough, just something for you guys is to build those relationships with other brokers, and to, it's like almost like free money. You want to make sure that you're referring great brokers though, and your clients are going to love it that you're actually giving them this information, because who do you go to when you're thinking, somebody wants to move? The first thing you think about, oh, you know what? Let me ask Nicole. Nicole will know who to call in Florida if I want to move there. So it's just another great way, for you guys to make additional money, especially if you're starting in the business at any point in the business. There's no reason why you shouldn't be referring business all over. So let your clients know that you can help them no matter what. I always ask and make sure, that you're the first of mind. So ask your clients, like, do they know anybody else who's looking to move? Because you never know how many people will come from that. So kind of going back to positioning listings and whatnot and marketing. So photography, I was saying earlier that if you can't afford a professional photographer, don't take a listing. Photography is so, so important. It's so important to make sure that your photographs are bright. You have blue skies, you see TVs, you see color. You want to make them look as best as possible, because that's what's going to draw somebody to them. Virtual staging. So if a lot of times, most people, probably about 85% of people, don't have imaginations. They cannot figure out where furniture can go. So staging is always the best if you have an empty home, but if you can't get your clients to foot the bill for staging, then I definitely suggest virtual staging. You can get it done as inexpensive as $40 a room. It is so worth it. And then what I'll do is I'll actually take posters and I'll put them on easels inside the space, so that when I'm walking somebody through the space, they can actually see those posters of the virtual staging. And I can point out, okay, here's your bed, here's where your couch will go, here's where your dining table will go. And that will give them a better idea of how they can use the space. And I can't stress how important that is. It's worth the investment, and you'll get that listing a million times, and you'll get it sold versus somebody else who's not doing this. I'll give you an example. Actually, this apartment right here, 15 West 53rd at Museum Tower, my clients we put it on the market, and originally there was wall-to-wall carpet. It was about 2890 square feet. And the wall-to-wall carpet was hideous, not gonna lie. I asked them, can we rip up the carpet? At least this will make it look so much better. I did my first broker's open. The carpet was there. Everyone's feedback was get rid of the carpet. So finally they agreed to get rid of the carpet. There's beautiful teak herringbone floors under there, which completely changed the entire apartment. It needed a total gut renovation. The appliances were from 1980. They hadn't been changed. They were literally older than me, but the space was amazing and had such great bones. And I wanted to figure out, how can I get this sold? So I virtually staged it, but I also went one step further, where whoever purchased this apartment was going to do a gut renovation. There's no way you can really live there in the condition it was. I mean, I don't even know if the appliances work. And basically what I did is I teamed up with a design build architect who did quotes as far as a mid-range, a high-end, and a luxury renovation for every room. This was a 4-bedroom apartment. So he actually listed out and spec'd out what type of oven, what type of appliances, what type of toilets would go in each one of these renovations. So when the buyer came, I had these packets ready, so anyone who walked through the space would know exactly how much it would cost them to get this up to the grade where they would find it livable. And that in turn helped us sell this apartment, which was really important. So using something like this and being creative and thinking outside of the box when you're trying to get a listing is really going to be helpful and help you secure that listing at the end of the day. Tips for preparing the home. I went over a little bit of this earlier: decluttering, vacuuming. Anytime we go in and take photographs, I would get there at least a half an hour early, and we'll stage a little bit. I always take pictures of things as to where they were to make sure we put them right back, so our clients aren't upset if we move things. I'll take everything out of the bathroom. We just make sure that the home is cleaned and all the light bulbs are changed so you have the best light. Sometimes we'll put books on the coffee table. Just want to make it look as clean as possible before you're actually taking photographs and you're showing it. I'll tell you guys a funny story. The first listing I ever had was a studio in Battery Park City, as I mentioned earlier, and there was a tenant in place. And the tenant told me he was going to Russia for a month. So I went to go do an open house on a Sunday, and I always got there a half an hour early just to make sure, you never know, just to be safe. Well, long story, this Sunday, I didn't knock because I figured, all right, the tenant's not there. And that was a huge lesson because I opened the door and there was a naked guy sitting there smoking a cigarette. And there was a girl walking around the apartment, barely any clothes on. And I was like, who are you? And he said he was the tenant's cousin. I guess the tenant forgot to tell me that he was staying there. So long story short, it's always knock, no matter what. Just make sure, you never know. And I had to get that apartment together. I had an open house in a half an hour. So a little trick that somebody taught me was if you actually boil cinnamon on a stove, it'll get the smell out of any space. I opened the windows. I said, like, I don't care who you are, but you need to get out of here because I am having an open house in a half an hour and my goal is to sell this apartment. So they got up, they got out, I cleaned the apartment. It was a complete disaster. I got all the dishes put away. I mopped, I cleaned the counters, I opened the windows, and we had a very successful open house. So I like to share that with clients so that they know that I'm always going to make sure to present it in the best of light. I had a property once, a 3-bedroom apartment I was showing, and I knew I had to get there half an hour early every time. All the beds were unmade, the sink was full of dishes, and you want to make sure that when you're showing any listing that you have, you're showing it in the best of light. The last thing you want to do is walk in with a potential buyer and bring them to a property that looks terrible, there's stuff all over the place. You're never going to sell it that way, and it just makes you look bad as a broker. So again, just some of the custom design print marketing I use, our market reach. If I'm working with somebody who's a high D or a high I, and I don't go through any of this information, this is the one page I go through with them. The most important thing you can do is educate your clients. So I work with a lot of financial clients. I work with hedge funds and whatnot. And believe it or not, most of them are not knowledgeable about real estate. So it's our job to educate them and make sure that they understand. So closing costs, this is the most important because at the end of the day, you're at a closing table, you've negotiated a deal, you've worked really hard to get there, and your client gets their check and they say, Nicole, where's the rest of my money? It's the last thing you ever want to hear. So you want to make sure they understand from day one exactly what their closing costs are going to be so they understand what they're going to net. So I go through this page with them. I explain the broker's commission, the seller's attorney, managing agent fees, any move-out fees, New York City and New York State transfer tax, which most people are not aware of, and any mortgage satisfaction fees. So what I'll do is once we agree on a price, I'll actually write that price on here, and then I will calculate these numbers for them so they understand exactly what they'll net at the end of the day. I can tell you probably 99% of the time how my clients thank me. I recently took over a listing that was on the market for 6 months, and the seller had no clue about the New York City and New York State transfer taxes, and she couldn't believe that her last broker didn't educate her about it. So our job, again, at the end of the day is to educate our clients and to educate our sellers, and that'll go a really long way. So if I tell some people, okay, this presentation is a lot of fluff, but here's the one page that you must look at the end of the day, and I'll fold this down and I'll make sure that they're aware of these numbers. So then I talk a little bit about who we are at Keller Williams, about our luxury division, our global network, and about Red Day, which is really important and KW cares. So this is one of the reasons I love Keller so much too, is basically who we are. So we are not just real estate brokers. We are actually people who care, and we give back to the community, and we shut down every year on Red Day to help give back to the community, and we donate part of our commissions if we want to KW Cares. And I'm sure there's going to be a lot that's done with that right now as our nation's in this crisis. So I think it's important that you also show who you are, and that you're not just another agent out there from another brokerage, that you're actually part of something that matters. So the rest is, that's pretty much this. So I leave this book with them, and I'll usually, if they're ready to sign, I'll always ask them to sign when I'm there, and I'll ask if they have any questions at the end, and we'll agree on a price, and I'll ask them to sign the listing paperwork. Sometimes I'll always put 6% in the listing paperwork, and sometimes a seller will say, well, can I do it for 5%? So-and-so broker is going to do it for 5%. And I'll say, well, I wouldn't personally hire myself right now if I was going to cut my commission, because at the end of the day, I'm always going to negotiate you more money by not cutting your commission. I'm a certified negotiation expert. And if I'm going to cut my own income right now, then I wouldn't hire me to actually negotiate your biggest asset. And 9 times out of 10, they say, okay, no problem. I had to ask, and they sign the paperwork. So these are all great things. Another thing I do is I make sure to put a handwritten note in the mail right after I go in that listing presentation to thank them. There are instances where they're not ready to sign yet and they want to interview, they're interviewing other brokers. And there's times where I've actually gotten a call from sellers and said, you know what, we weren't sure and we made the decision because we got your handwritten note. So that again goes a really long way. A couple of other just kind of tricks about the industry and things I like to do, which I'll share with you guys before I open it to questions, is I always believe that as a professional, you have to dress well. You have to dress as a professional and dress better than your client. I don't care where you're showing property. I don't believe in jeans and sneakers. I always believe in getting dressed up and looking good and dressing as a professional, especially when you're selling luxury real estate. You just want to give that image, and that image is really important, and that comes over to pretty much everything. And that's, people are going to refer to you and they're going to think about what's the first impression they got from you. And this person was dressed well. If they're dressed well, they're going to be able to sell a luxury product. I have a rule that if I'm selling anything over $2 million, I always wear high heels. The clickety click click on the floor always sounds nice. And no matter where I am, I'll always bring the heels with me, even if I'm running around Manhattan, and I'll make sure to put them on just before showing. So little things and tricks of the trade that work for me. I'd say about 99% of my listings I go on, I get. So any questions you guys have for me, I'm more than happy to answer. And I'm going to open it up to you guys.
Nicole, can you see some of the questions in the panel bar? Otherwise, Maria, do you want to?
Sure, I can read them out.
Okay.
So Nicole, the one question that came in was in a luxury market where say median sale price 1 million, how many units and or sales volume to reach where you recommend expanding from a solo agent to starting a team, and who was your first hire?
Okay, so great question. I think it really depends on how much you can handle and if you're seller focused or you're buyer focused. My business was always about 80% seller focused, about 20% buyer. I shifted those models in the last 2 years because we became more of a buyer's market, and I was probably 80% buyers, 20% sellers, because that's where the money was to be made. I think personally, I think an agent can really handle maybe 6 to 7 buyers at one time. And potential like 2 listings maybe. I think we also have to show every single listing in New York, so it's a little bit different. So I can't say there's a specific number, I think it's just a matter of what can you actually handle, and if you can't give the best service to your clients, then it's time to bring somebody else on and to expand. So my first hire was an admin. But I will tell you that in the beginning, I got so busy so fast, and I had all this rental business that I literally went to the head of our rental department and I said, who's a great rental agent who would love some leads? And I just started giving this person some leads and having them close them and taking a percentage of them because I didn't want to say no to the business. But my first hire, again, was that admin because I did this all the wrong way first. And then I came back and read the MREA again, and I did it the right way. So it was the best thing that I did, doing it the right way and actually making sure that I was hiring the right people. And after the admin, then I hired a buyer's agent. And the buyer's agent at first was like a hybrid as a showing agent. And basically, I also have some referral agents too on my team now. So I have agents who had worked for me in New York, and one moved out to Orange County, California. One moved out to Aspen. So they refer a lot of business to me. And I have our buyer's agents are also rental agents as well. You never know when or where your next deal is going to come from. I always say there's nothing too small ever. I had a $2,000 renter once that ended up having a trust fund and bought a $5 million apartment for me years later. And I remember that was the biggest nightmare. It was like June or July, my first year in real estate. It was 3 roommates, and I was running up and down stairs of 6-story walk-ups. And it was so hard to try to find them something. Every time we found something, somebody else would come in and make an offer first. And I don't think I've ever worked so hard for a deal, but I kept the relationship, and years later it ended up paying off. So it's another thing I could suggest to you guys is never say no, but you want to be able to support your clients, and you want to be able to give them the best customer service. So as far as when to expand or when to bring people on, when you can't give them the best customer service anymore all by yourself.
Nicole, the favorite thing of mine that you said, and I'm glad that you now repeated it, was that when you did it wrong, you went back to the MREA and
Right.
read the book and started over. Just for the people that aren't necessarily up with Keller speak lingo, because I know there are some people here that aren't with Keller. My favorite drum to beat all day long is that MREA, Millionaire Real Estate Agent book, for those that don't know. How else has that book impacted you from day one to now?
So I will say that I read that book about 3 or 4 times a year. And every time I read it, it means something different to me because I'm at a different point in my business. So it's been, huge for me. It's made a major impact. It's made me at some points in my career realize that I made the wrong hires and I needed to take a step back and make the right hires. So it's taught me different models. It's taught me, how can I make something work that's not working? And sometimes I forget that I read it, and 4 months later, I'm in a different place in my business. And I say, okay, now I really need to stop for a minute and make sure that this part of my business is running correctly, because I have, maybe I have A working, but B's not. So there's so many different parts of it, whether it's, looking at your financial models or looking at your expenses or looking at, is this the best person? And then hiring somebody to really manage others. So when I first started in the business, I was like a micromanager. And it took me a long time to realize that I need to give the reins sometimes. And it was a very hard thing for me to do. But once I did it, my team worked so much more efficiently. Everybody worked. It gave me so much time back, not only to enjoy life a little bit, but also to make sure that I had the right talent in place. And one thing that Gary always says is he has 5 people that report to him, and he runs this huge organization. He's our CEO, right? So no matter what business you're in, no matter what organization you're in, I think it's really important to make sure that you have the right people in place and that you're managing them correctly. And that if you have, what I've realized is that there are so many steps down. So it's not just everybody reporting to me. It's my director of ops. At a point when I had a pretty big team, everybody was reporting to my director of ops, and my director of ops was reporting directly to me. And that in turn gave me just time and leverage, and it let me really focus on the things that I liked and I enjoyed. So I had gotten to a point in my business, I had about an 8-person team about 2.5 years ago. Unfortunately, I had lost my husband, but at the time I had a really, really well-run team. And thank God I did, because I was able to, do what I needed to do and go take care of him and go to the funeral. And I had these great agents in place. But when that all happened, I had my director of ops, and I had agents who were all reporting to that director of ops. And then I had people who were really focused on buyers, on sellers, and they knew exactly what to do. So it's definitely helped me throughout the years. And again, I think whether you're a new agent, whether you're an agent in the business for 5 months or a year, read that book. I call it the Real Estate Bible. A friend of mine actually, who is an agent in Chicago now, originally is from Sydney, and she sold real estate there. And she told me this great story recently. We were walking down the street in Dallas, and she said, I read that book before she knew who Keller Williams was or Gary Keller. She goes, when I lived in Australia, and I said to my dad, I'm going to move to the States and I'm going to build a real estate business there based on this book. And I found it so interesting. And I recently had gotten her over to Keller. She was at a different brokerage in Chicago for a long time. And I just found that it was so special that somebody who didn't even know who Gary was or anything found that book on a shelf. And she had this dream, and she came here and she was successful with it because of reading that book. So
that's a great story.
Yeah.
So we have a couple more questions, if that's okay. One was asking, who's your virtual staging company?
So I actually have had different people in the past who I've used. I can certainly share that with you. If anybody wants to send me an email, if you have any questions or whatnot, my email is Nicole, Nicole, at the NicoleGaryTeam.com. I'm also, my Instagram handle is at Nicole Gary NYC, and on Facebook I'm Nicole Gary, but I'm at 5,000 friends, so you have to follow me on Instagram. So yeah, I'm more than happy to share any resources with you if you want to send me a quick email.
Awesome. One other question. So getting a design or build person, I think you talked about that, to do multiple estimates for a reno. How much did you pay for this? I guess if
Zero.
and if so, if the buyer used that design or build person, do you get your money back?
So very, very good question. So I found a design build person who didn't charge me, who actually just did it hoping that they would get the business when the buyer came. So if you can build a relationship with somebody, whether it's design build person, an architect, they will sometimes do this for you at no cost, but you want to try to help promote them and give them that business when somebody comes in. And they put a lot of time and a lot of effort into it, so you want to do your very best to help them. That kind of brings me also to allied resources. So allied resources in this business are so huge. I was huge at networking. When I first started in this business, I was in a networking group 3 nights a week and 2 mornings a week. I was in BNI. I was at different meetup groups in the design industry. I mean, I was in front of so many people that it got to a point where I had so many coffee meetings, I didn't even have time to do the business. So I had to stop taking meetings. But that's one thing, if you're new to the business or you're trying to grow your business, network as much as possible. I didn't get to a 15,000 person database by not being out there networking. I mean, my first 2.5, 3 years in real estate, I never stopped. I didn't take a day off, literally. And a lot of that was networking. And I built the most amazing relationships, which I still have now. So I have an insurance resource. I have a mortgage resource. I have an interior designer, an architect. I have contractors. And my team can be a personal concierge really to any of my clients. So we can do anything that they want, and we can introduce them to anybody based on the networking that I've done and the relationships that I've built. You always want to make sure that you're building great relationships, because those people are going to in turn bring you business as well. So always come from a place of compassion and ask, what can you do to help somebody else? And when you do that and you are helping other people, it comes back to you tenfold.
That's awesome. So 2 more questions, although I'm sure there are more out there. But one is, you mentioned being a certified negotiation expert, and that agent is asking, was there something, what in your training, or how did?
Yeah, so I actually did it through REBNY, the Real Estate Board of New York. I think it was a 2-day class I took. It was amazing. It was really, really great. I learned a ton. I use it every day. Working on negotiating a pretty big deal right now. And I'm working on it with another broker, and they had said something to me, and I said, no, I was like, they really want the house. I was like, they're going to buy it. They're going to spend the extra money. They're not going anywhere. There's nothing else like this. So just let them sit for, 24, 48 hours, and they're going to come back and they're going to pay it. So learning these little things, and they came back and they came up in the number, is really important. Negotiation is certainly a skill, and there's a lot that you learn about people's personalities, and you learn about their psychology, and based on that, you become a great negotiator. But it's an excellent class, and I definitely recommend it.
Great. So another question here is, so when you're on a listing presentation and you know that you're competing with other agents, you mentioned giving sellers tips on getting the home ready, and do you do that right then and there, or do you wait until they commit?
I actually do it right then and there. I find that once you talk to them about it, they start feeling comfortable with you and they like your advice, they're more likely to sign with you. So, I mean, if anything, somebody else is going to come in and try to give them hopefully the same advice. But usually I've heard a lot of people say, that's a really great idea if they've interviewed other agents. I really like what your advice and what you have to say. And that helps me get the listing. So I don't have a problem sharing knowledge.
Okay, awesome. So in that spirit of sharing knowledge, what can you offer advice for agents that are just starting out and have limited budgets? Because obviously you spend a lot on getting your listings up and running.
Absolutely. Use your sphere. I actually don't spend a lot of money in marketing at all. I have a big sphere of influence. Call every single person you know, and don't be scared to pick up the phone. Don't be scared to get in front of people. Go to networking. You don't have to pay to network. You don't have to pay to go to a charity event. You can volunteer. People who are on the board of charities usually are wealthy. They're helping, they're volunteering, and you build relationships that way and you do something great for yourself. Just talk to as many people as you can every day. I don't care, you know, right now it's going to be hard to do in person, but you know, whether you're on the bus or I always say you're on the subway, whether you're in Starbucks, like you never know who your next client's going to be. I always strike up as many conversations, whether you're online at the supermarket, just talk to people and just be yourself. You don't have to bring up real estate in every conversation, but just get to know people. Call the people you know, let them know you're in the business, see if there's anything you can do to help them, and just stay in front of them. One of the biggest brokers actually at Keller Williams, who's a friend of mine, is so sweet, and I sent out my newsletter. That was the best thing I did when I started, and I still do this every month. And every month he sends me an email and says, Nicole, your marketing's so amazing. And I say, thank you. And stay in front of people. So once you build relationships, don't ruin those relationships and try to stay in front of people as much as possible. Go on social media, you know, just call people. Like right now is the best time to call everyone in your phone just to say, hi, how are you doing? You know, what can I do to help you? You don't necessarily need to be selling them real estate, but let them know what you're doing and ask what they're up to. I actually am going to be getting my Florida license, and I always wanted to expand in Florida. And right now I know a lot of people that I grew up with, their families or their parents are moving down to Florida. So the last few days I've actually been in front of people that I haven't talked to in years, but I've been calling people that I grew up with, kind of catching up with them, seeing how they're doing, and they're so happy to hear from me. So just call everyone you know. And, you know, if you don't have a lot of people on your phone, well, that's okay. It was like, you know, go in groups. There's so many different Facebook chat groups, and there's networking groups where you can go to meetup.com. They're doing virtual meetups now, doing virtual happy hours. You don't have to pay for any of this. Meetup.com, there's groups for people who like specific dogs. There's people who like gardening. There's people who like to cook. There's people who like wine. I mean, there's so many things out there. Talk to people who have the same interests as you and get to know them, because you'll have a lot to talk to them about. And at the end of the day, the people who know you the best, like you and trust you, are the ones who are going to refer you business. So don't be scared to pick up a phone. Don't be scared to say hello. How are you doing? Because that's the easiest way to build your business, and you don't have to spend any money doing that.
Nicole,
Yeah.
I can't thank you enough for how much you've shared, and I certainly want to make sure we do what we can to build your business as well. Will you give your contact info one more time?
Yes, so my email is nicole@thenicolegaryteam.com. So like TheNicoleGary team, TEAM.com. And on Instagram, I'm at Nicole Gary NYC. I'm also on LinkedIn as well, but follow me on Instagram. Actually, my team and I are doing some really exciting things right now. We're going to be doing kind of a new page and things that we could do to help people through this crisis. So I'd love for you to follow me, and more information will come there. I'm really super excited about, you know, everything we're going to try to do to help in any way we can right now. So,
and I know that you are just the ultimate professional, and those of us here who are about 20, 25 miles outside of New York City all know people that come and go your way. So most of us would love to do some referral business with you.
Thank you. I would love to take your referrals. We take good care of them. That's actually one thing that we love. We love referrals, and we always keep you posted throughout the entire process. So anytime I'm referred a client from an agent, I will keep you posted and let you know, once we make contact, what their timeline is. When we start looking at properties, we'll also let you know, as soon as we sign a contract, what's going on throughout the process. So we really try to stay in front of our referral clients, and it's the best thing to do. I mean, I'll tell you guys, recently, during all this, and New York City was kind of like all of a sudden shutting down, and I forgot I referred a business out to somebody in Florida actually like a year ago, and the deal fell through 2 times, and I got a call from the referral agent saying, by the way, we're going to closing today, and I was so excited, and I got this great check. So who doesn't want that? I actually have referrals or agents that I work with who literally just like refer me business, and their referral checks from New York are bigger than them selling 4 homes in their market. So think about it. We have pretty high price points, guys. I'd love to help your clients and work with you. So anything you need, please feel free to reach out. And thank you so much again, Shannon, for organizing this and having me. And I hope to see everyone soon in person.
Yeah, we'd love to have you out here as soon as life gets back to normal. Thank you
Yeah.
so much.
You're welcome. Everyone stay safe and stay healthy and be well.
You too.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Bye.